District Attorney Scott McNamara in studio here this morning. All right, this it looks, from what I'm told, this is a video at this animal shelter on Broad Street that is about a month old. Is that true?
April 4th.
Okay. So this obviously took everybody by storm yesterday when it was posted on social media, and everybody's calling for action to be taken.
Right.
And one person made a statement saying videos don't lie. That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes videos show something that is much different than reality. What's the case here? What do you think?
Well, you're 100% right. Videos sometimes show a snapshot of something. Yeah. So what happened was, kind of like backtrack, we had been getting complaints about that location, and we've been investigating that location for quite some time. As far back as March, we sent in the SPCA, which, if the listeners remember, is the organization that the county actually contracted with to do investigations on animal abuse. And they're out of Syracuse. We sent them in March. They reported back to us that there were no issues.
Yeah.
That was we did that because we were getting anonymous letters.
We got the same letters. We've been getting
the information that at that point we were concerned that maybe the anonymous letters, there was, somebody had an axe to grind and maybe was exaggerating because of the report on the coming back from the SPCA. The next thing that, when I say we, the government, different parts of the government, the city of Utica did was that we had a report that she was living there. Obviously, you can't live there. That's the old GE building, and that's not a residential building. And so they sent codes in, and that information proved to not be 100% inaccurate. She did not live there. We didn't see any signs that she lived there. But they did find numerous codes violations. She's a tenant, not the landlord. So the codes violations were directed to the corporation that owns the building, and that corporation is actually out of Massachusetts.
Okay.
So a letter was sent to them. The next thing that we did to continue to investigate this was we sent in the fire marshal, and that's where the video came from. So we were trying to determine whether there's any issues, with a fire or anything of that nature. The same situation you do any mass gathering.
Sure.
In this case, the mass gathering is dogs. So
about 100 dogs?
118.
118.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right, that's what I said.
Yeah.
But we sent in the fire marshal. They took the video, and then the video came back to us. And then we asked for a report. One of the things, basically what happens under the law is we do have the authority to go in and remove the dogs, but we have to get an order from a judge. So basically you have to get like a search warrant, a search and seizure warrant. So you have to present sworn facts to a magistrate and to show that the dogs are not being fed, watered, or properly taken care of.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, when we got the video, we felt that that's where we were at.
Yeah.
The problem we had at that point, and we're going back to now around April 4th, 5th, 6th, and that point, I assigned two of my investigators. I assigned one of my paralegals, and I assigned one of my assistant district attorneys to address this issue and to work on applying for the warrant to enter the place. One of the first things they all came back to me and said in a very short period of time is, hey, what are we going to do with these 118 dogs?
Yeah.
And that's where the problem started for us, because we didn't want to get in a situation where we're going to have to euthanize any dogs. There's no facility locally, and I don't have anything in my possession where we could house 118 dogs. Obviously, you also have to feed them. You can't just, as somebody was yelling at me on the phone yesterday, well, I should have just went in there and let them all out of their cages. Well, that's really not, rational neither. I can't
animals at the zoo,
Does sound like
118 dogs running around the city.
Does sound like
hit by cars.
A good movie, though.
Yes, it does. So at that point, we started to negotiate with different agencies, trying to find someplace that would be able to take these dogs if we executed the warrant, the seizure warrant, and the search and seizure warrant. We worked with different agencies from New York State, including New York State Humane Society. Ultimately, we were directed to the Humane Society of the United States, which is actually their main office is in Washington, D.C. We had been working with them over the past few weeks. It started, I would say, when we finally got in touch with them, I would say it was sometime near the end of April.
Yeah.
We had to enter an MOU with them, and for the listeners who don't understand what that is, it's actually just basically a contract that we had agreed to follow the rules that they wanted us to follow. They had certain rules in place, including making sure we legally entered that location and legally took the dogs. And they had agreed that they would find homes for these dogs, and really what they were going to do is to replace the dogs in different shelters. And what the plan was, and actually the plan was to execute the warrant today. Today was D-Day. So
okay.
And my understanding from them was that they had 3 tractor trailers that they were going to bring up here. They had 3 different locations where they could divide the dogs up to. And they had veterinaries on they were going to bring in. They were volunteering their time. Each dog had to be inspected. And it's kind of like evidence. Each dog has to be, identified, inspected. There had to be a wellness exam conducted on each dog. We needed that so that in the event that there were dogs that were not being taken care of, that we could prosecute Kim, and I would have witnesses that you can call in court. And basically the section of the law that you've been violating would be 386 of the Ag and Markets Law. So that's what the game plan was. The day got pushed back from today to tomorrow because there was an issue with some of the vets. I mean, obviously these vets have businesses to run, and something came up. I don't know if one had a surgery scheduled for today and they couldn't come. But the bottom line is it got moved till tomorrow. And
this is still active at this point?
No, it was not active at this point.
Okay.
So what happened was we have to update the information we have when we go to a court. You have to show what is current information.
Right. Yes.
So you can't just go based upon stale. The April 4th video, once it became about 10 days old, is considered legally stale. So you have to have new information that you can show the court that the current conditions are consistent with the video. We could still use the video, but we have to update, or as we say in the law, refresh the information.
It would give her the opportunity to say, I cleaned this up.
Well, that's
possibly
but more importantly, for legal reasons, is because you don't want the government kicking doors in based upon information that's years old.
Okay.
In this case, it was over a month and a half old. So what we started to do in anticipation of going to the court and asking for a warrant, we started surveilling the location. We had been watching the location, but we amped up our surveillance the week after Mother's Day. So Mother's Day was, what was it, last Sunday? So that week, what we noticed was that as the week progressed, we noticed an increased amount of activity there. We saw all these dogs are now being walked. It's stuff we didn't see before. We're seeing all these people going in there and helping. And so one of my investigators came back and had reported, hey, listen, I don't know what's going on, but it seems that now there's something new going on. There's a lot of activity there. So my lead investigator surveilled the location on Friday, and he came to the same conclusion. And so at that point, basically between the two of them, they were like, I don't think we're going to be able to show that the conditions are deplorable right now. That obviously, I think caging 118 dogs in itself is a problem, but it's not illegal.
Right.
So what we did was we actually said, well, if we can't get the warrant, let's just go knock on the door. We knocked on the door. Kim let my investigator in. He went through the location. It was not consistent with what you see on the video. As he said, there were dogs. There was numerous people there walking the dogs. There was water for the dogs all over the place. They were cleaning the pens, and and here's the thing: you can't clean 118 pens with a snap of a finger, so it takes time. So yes, some dogs were in pens that they had defecated in, but they were all being cleaned. So at that point in time, we didn't feel comfortable going and applying for a warrant that we felt, surely was going to be denied.
Yeah.
So at that point, what we were trying to do was negotiate with Kim. And one of the things that I had wanted and my lead investigator had asked of her and he wanted was we wanted records to show the dogs are actually being taken care of. Is there vet records on these? She didn't have to give us that. There's no law that there's no law that requires you to take.
So she was definitely cooperating.
She was cooperating with my main investigator. We were encouraging her to get the number down. She was somewhat proud of the fact, at least this is what was reported back to me, that she had adopted out 8 of them.
Yeah.
But still, you're talking about a very large number.
Still have 110.
Right. Yeah. So coming into this week, we were waiting for records from veterinarians, which once again she don't have to give us, and there's no law that requires her to have these dogs looked at by a vet. But obviously, that's something that I felt, my investigator felt that was necessary. We didn't expect to get all that stuff within one day,
right?
Especially when you're asking a vet to photocopy and provide all that stuff. They still have businesses to run, so we expected it to take a week or two to get that. And that's where we were. And then, obviously somebody from the fire department pushed out that video on YouTube yesterday, and kind of, in an indirect way, put a lot of pressure on her and got everybody all amped up. But it kind of, obviously created a problem with our investigation.
Yeah,
I don't know if she knew the significance of what we were actually trying to do. I mean, and so, at this point, we don't have probable cause to get the search and seizure warrant. We don't have that, and now we're kind of back to the drawing boards on how we're going to address this problem. Unfortunately, and I've been on this show and I've spoke to numerous other media outlets and complained about this before, but New York State laws are very antiquated, although there was some recent laws that address leaving your dog in a car. There is no, as some lady was yelling at me yesterday from New Jersey telling me, well, charge her with hoarding. I said, yeah, well, can you just please tell me what section of law that is? Because obviously I missed that one.
Wow.
There is no hoarding statute. I mean, this is very emotional, and the problem with all these things is and that's part of being the DA and part of being a police officer, and you can't act upon emotion, because when you start doing things that you're totally based upon emotion, you make mistakes.
Yeah.
So, for example, if we had went in and seized all these dogs on April 5th, where would I put 118 dogs?
Yeah.
And now I'm in a situation where I've just made matters even worse. We took all these dogs from a place where, in our opinion, and I continue to say, in my opinion, I don't believe in housing dogs in a crate in the first place. It's not illegal. As a matter of fact, under our statute, it specifically allows that in the sense that if you read the statute, it says if you crate them, you have to provide water for them every 12 hours, food and water. And but I think it's, in my opinion, I just don't think it's a proper way to treat an animal. But it doesn't matter what I think. I have laws that I have to abide by, and the law specifically says we have to go to a magistrate to get the dog.
So at this point, your hands are basically
unless
right
the conditions go back to a situation. Now, having said that, and now the cat's out of the bag, so it's kind of a moot point at this point, because we're now trying to investigate someone that knows we're investigating her. But here's the bottom line. My main concern right now, today, going forward, is we are moving into a warmer time in our climate.
It's going to be hot, though.
It's going to be hot.
Warehouse, yeah.
And one of the things that I was very concerned about, and we were negotiating, and I had my investigator negotiating, was I was going to, and it's not, I don't typically investigate stuff because that's not what the DA does. But I wanted to be able to go in there and to make a decision as to whether or not I thought the smell in there was too strong, or more importantly, the heat situation.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, she didn't have to let us in per se. But, we're going to continue to try to monitor that. That location needs to have a situation where there's clean air for these animals, and more importantly, air conditioning. It cannot be 100 degrees in there with all these dogs in there.
Yep.
That's what we're looking at now, because we believe that's part of the care under the statute that she's required to do. So just feeding them and watering them and taking them for a walk, that's good. But when we're coming into this time period, she needs to address that problem. We will continue to monitor that. The minute that I believe that she has broken the law and we can charge her, she will be charged. Having said that, as of Friday, we didn't believe we had that.
Okay.
And that's where we are.
Did you ever get the veterinarian records?
No, but it was only one day. We were there on Friday.
Right.
Monday, I didn't expect to get them before a week to 2 weeks, to be honest.
So, by the way, the release of the video, this is the problem that we have, is that we sit here from afar and we say, they're doing nothing. This happens also with cases that are called into welfare, where I think this child is being abused, and then you're sitting there and you're mulling, and stewing over this because the government's not doing anything. When you don't, but you don't know that maybe there's something being done behind the scenes, and the release of the video probably didn't help you.
Well, and just so you know, her situation has been being investigated for well over a year. There's been a lot of other allegations. Somebody constantly is sending us anonymous things. We've been investigating the not-for-profit status of this location. I mean, ultimately, we've determined that it is a not-for-profit out of Long Island. What we've been able to determine is these dogs are coming from downstate.
So they are coming from downstate.
They're coming from downstate, and she does have, and as recently as yesterday, I had my people checking to see if there is any effort on her part to actually adopt the dogs out. There is. There is a website.
So,
but
when you talk about when people watch the video or they make these complaints, and I know you touched on this a little bit, people think, well, they're not doing anything, but a lot of this stuff isn't illegal, right? Like you mentioned the welfare, child welfare, like. If I let my kid watch TV for 20 hours a day, that's probably not a good parenting move, but not necessarily illegal. There's no requirement that you have to walk them X miles a day or take them out X number of times. So what is illegal on the video? Is having feces in a cage illegal?
No.
You have to have water every 12 hours.
What the law requires is, and there's no specific statutes that says you can't have feces in the cage. Obviously, that's not even practical. I mean, because when your dog goes to the bathroom, I mean, if you're sleeping when it goes to the bathroom, it's going to be in there. So, but you have to provide, what the law requires, you have to provide food, water, and proper care. Now, that's where the feces in the cage comes. Is it proper care? So, obviously, that's a judgment call. So I would feel more comfortable going to a judge if we could show that there had been feces in the cage for days, not for a couple hours. Because a couple hours, by the time you get someone to clean the cage or whatever, we're getting into very technical things. And here's the thing. If we make a mistake on this, and she gets all these dogs back, and then the county's responsible for the bill, well, you guys would be asking me the same questions. Well, what in the world were you doing? Didn't you think this out? I mean, for example, had I went and seized 118 dogs and then there's cameras and here I am with 118 dogs saying, hey, does anybody want a dog?
How big's your office?
Think about this. Every police officer in the city of Utica could have taken one of those dogs home, and we still would have had about 30, 40 dogs extra.
Wow.
I mean, so that's what we're talking about. This would have been a huge undertaking. As a matter of fact, the estimate we were getting was going to cost about $200,000 to do what we were going to do.
Wow.
What was scheduled today, and then actually push back to
tomorrow. Is she being paid to bring these dogs up here?
That's the information we're getting. I mean, we don't have any proof of that, but we are getting information that she's getting so much money per dog.
Yeah.
But once again, somebody said, well, why don't you just find out where that is? Well, that's easier said than done. I mean, it's one of the hardest parts of investigating financial crime is you have to try to figure out where the money's coming from. And there's nothing illegal about that.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the things that we have been looking at is she declaring this as income? Is the not-for-profit actually doing things the way they're supposed to financially? There's actually reporting requirements and everything like that. Those are all things, but obviously it all changed once we started seeing, when we saw the April 4th video. We were concerned, but at that point in time we were on a full court press to go in there and to take these dogs.
Did you get into reports when they were over on Riscony Boulevard?
We did not have as much information as we do now
on
the Broad Street.
That place was left in a tough position, we're
absolutely.
told.
And one of the things we did when we started investigating Broad Street was we went to that location and we found out, obviously for what we're being told is that they've actually had to resurface that
it was a mess.
because of the odor and stuff.
Yeah.
This is no way for dogs to live. But as I've said before, I mean, if people want to complain, the complaint, they can call me and tie up my day so I can't continue an investigator. That's what I did all day yesterday.
Yes.
But the reality is, if you want to fix this problem, there's a couple ways that this can be fixed. Number one, contact the state legislature and get us some laws that are specific to these type of situations. I spoke to the county executive yesterday. He agreed 100% with me, and I know, I don't even know what time it is right now, but I know this today when the county opens up. Tony Pacenti, myself, we're going to talk to the county attorney's office, and specifically Allison, who's the assistant county attorney who has been working with us on animal issues. We're going to try to figure out whether or not we can get a new county law that requires people to get a permit if they're going to have more than a certain amount of animals. This is a huge amount of animals. But we also deal with this throughout the county sometimes when we have somebody that has like 20 or 30 cats. So we need to start treating this like we treat daycare centers. If you're going to going to engage in the activity that Kim Strong's engaging in, maybe the government needs to step up and say, okay, now we need permits.
So,
now you have to
prove. They don't have to
right now it looks like this is very unregulated.
It's very unregulated.
Which is certainly a problem.
It is. And once again, the laws are in the ag and market, agricultural and marketing section of the law. In these laws, although they passed a few, and they phrased them Buster's laws a few years back, which basically has to do with leaving your dog in a car and different things like that. But we need to address these puppy mills. I mean, we kind of all gets lost in the shuffle, but when we first went into Word of Life, we dealt with the same situation where there was a puppy mill there. So we need to continue to do stuff and push for legislation so that we can regulate people that have this many dogs. And there should be certain quality of air. There's nothing in the law that. So I'm trying to argue that the proper care is that the dogs aren't smelling their own feces and stuff. That's a difficult push, and it totally is up to a judge.
Even the heat in a because you take a look. You grew up on a farm.
Absolutely.
Those farm barns can be very hot. They have a fan, not air conditioning.
Absolutely.
So,
and it sometimes gets very hot.
Yeah, so even that's going to be a tough...
that's the problem. And I can tell you that's one of the pushbacks right now on the animal registry is that, there's a couple legislators that are, that have a farm background and connected with a farm, George Joseph in particular, that has some serious concerns about this. I don't agree with him. I believe that it's a good thing. I also believe this. But, that's the issue when you start doing these things is you have a difference between companion animals and livestock. And for example, I grew up on a farm. I don't care how good a farmer is. Cows go to the bathroom and then they lay in it. That's what cows do because they're confined. They're put in a stanchion and they have no way out. So you clean it all up and then you leave them. And when you get up in the morning, that's the mess you have. That's cows. So when you pass these laws, you always have to be conscious of that we are a huge dairy industry locally. We have a lot of farmers. So you don't want to, be putting laws into effect where farmers can't satisfy that problem.
Right.
So, but dogs and cats should be pulled out. Companion animals should be treated differently. I've made that argument before. Hopefully, Albany's listening. I don't know, but I hope they are. I know the county executive is, and we will work on what we can locally, and hopefully, we can come up with some sort of permit situation for this.
As of right now, though, you've gone as far as you can, short of just observation going
forward.
Short
of breaking the law myself.
Or adopting 118 pounds.
I mean, I can go and seize the dogs, and it'll be illegal, and she'll file a lawsuit, and she'll sue me, and she could sue the county, and the county then end up. I mean, I have to abide by the law, so I get just as emotional when I see stuff like everyone else does.
Yeah.
But I have to, you have to take a big breath and you say, okay, what legally can we do, and let's make sure we do everything illegal and within the bounds of the law. And that's what we're doing, and we will continue to monitor the situation. I mean, I get it. Everybody's upset. So are we.
Yeah.
So are we.
Fair enough. District Attorney, thank you
for
so
having
much.
me.
I appreciate it. And you really laid it all out here for... it must have been an interesting day yesterday for you. I know
it
that.
was. It's not as interesting.
How many calls?
On a side
Do you know how
note,
many calls you got?
Oh my God, it was crazy. Well over 100.
And
but I just want to say something.
Too.
I was listening to the radio the other day, and whose voice do I hear? I was very impressed. And then yesterday, I was listening, and I heard Dave was on. So it's good to hear some familiar voices on your sister station. So
you on the OUR
OUR,
thing. So
yeah, and then Dave was on there. I think think yesterday was
Dave Coombs.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. So, yeah, it was I've kind of played that very quietly, but you caught it. You
I
did
know.
catch
Well,
it,
I
so.
was listening. I go, wait a sec. I know that voice.
Oh my God! Is it the morning? Oh no!
I go. And so Grant Guillermo and I were going, that's Bill Keeler doing the OUR show.
And I have people saying, boy, it's got to be great to be back on OUR. I never was on OUR. It's the one station, probably the only one that I haven't been on. But,
well, it's
pretty cool.
Having grown up listening to OUR and, guys like Jerry Krause and that.
Yeah.
It's, it's a good state. Well, it's good to hear you on there. It's good to hear Dave. Dave's a dear friend of mine. I know he's right down the hall on another station right now. But it's good to hear you guys on there.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks so much. And thanks for taking the time this morning.
Thanks.